What would you do if your entire city turned against you? If they accused you of corrupting the youth, of disrespecting the gods, of being dangerous to the very society you loved? Most of us would defend ourselves desperately, beg for mercy, compromise. But Socrates didn't. He stood before the jury of Athens, unshaken, and declared, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And for those words, for his refusal to stop asking questions, he drank poison. This is not just history. This is a human story, funny, tragic, and breathtakingly brave. Because Socrates wasn't simply the first great philosopher of Athens. He was the man who showed us what it means to live and die for truth. 1. The man who knew nothing. The strange thing about Socrates is that he never claimed to be wise. In fact, his most famous declaration was, "I know that I know nothing." This wasn't false humility. It was the very heart of his philosophy. Socrates believed wisdom begins not with answers, but with questions. He walked through Athens barefoot, unwashed, sometimes a little smelly, stopping people in the marketplace, politicians, craftsmen, poets, even young men. "Tell me," he would say, "what is justice? What is courage? What is love?" They would try to answer, and Socrates, with endless patience and often a mischievous grin, would show them the contradictions in their own beliefs. He didn't humiliate them for fun, though sometimes people laughed at his persistence. He wanted people to see that true wisdom meant admitting our ignorance and then seeking truth together. This method became known as the Socratic Method, and we still use it today, in classrooms, in law, in philosophy itself. 2. Socrates, the character. It's easy to imagine Socrates as a serious, grim old man. But the truth? He was hilarious. He had a round belly, a wide nose, bulging eyes, and walked barefoot everywhere. By Greek standards, he was far from handsome, yet his friends adored him. One story says he could drink more wine than anyone else at a banquet and never get drunk. Another tells us he once stood still in meditation for an entire day and night, astonishing his fellow soldiers. He joked about his appearance, compared himself to a torpedo fish that shocked others awake, and teased his friends with his relentless questioning. But behind the humor was a deep humanity. Socrates wasn't rich. He didn't charge money for teaching, unlike other philosophers. He lived simply, wore the same shabby cloak year after year, and believed virtue mattered more than wealth. For him, the good life wasn't about luxury or fame. It was about truth, justice, and the health of the soul. 3. Athens on trial. But not everyone found Socrates funny. His questions made people uncomfortable, especially the powerful. He exposed corrupt politicians. He revealed that the so-called experts didn't really know what they were talking about, and in a city still recovering from war and political turmoil, people wanted someone to blame. In 399 BCE, Socrates was put on trial. The charges? Corrupting the youth, not believing in the gods of the city, inventing new gods. The reality? His relentless pursuit of truth had made him a target. 4. The trial of Socrates. Standing before a jury of 500 Athenians, Socrates refused to beg for his life. He didn't flatter the jury. He didn't apologize for his questioning. Instead, he told them Athens should thank him, for he was like a gadfly stinging a lazy horse, keeping the city awake and alive. And then he said something extraordinary. The unexamined life is not worth living. He would rather die seeking truth than live in ignorance. The jury voted guilty. They offered him a chance to propose his own punishment. He suggested, half serious, half defiant, that he should be rewarded with free meals for life for his service to the city. Instead, they sentenced him to death. 5. The death of Socrates. Plato, his student, gives us the heartbreaking image. Socrates sat calmly with his friends in prison, waiting for the appointed time. He comforted them. He spoke of the immortality of the soul. When the cup of hemlock was brought, he took it without trembling, without fear. He drank it down. His last words were to his friend Crito. "We owe a rooster to Asclepius. Pay the debt." A strange, almost funny remark. Scholars believe he meant death was like a healing, a cure for the sickness of life. Even at the end, Socrates spoke with both seriousness and humor. 6. The humanitarian lesson. Why does Socrates still matter? Because his life was a radical act of humanity. He showed that the soul is more important than wealth, than power, than even life itself. He treated everyone, slaves, women, young men, politicians, as worthy of conversation. He believed truth wasn't owned by the few, but shared by all. Socrates teaches us that philosophy isn't about having all the answers. It's about the courage to keep asking, to keep seeking, to keep living with integrity, even when the world turns against you. 7. The legacy of Socrates. Socrates wrote nothing, not a single book. And yet, through his students, Plato and Xenophon, his spirit lives on. Plato turned Socrates into the central character of his dialogues. Aristotle, Plato's student, carried the torch further. Every philosopher since has walked in his shadow. Even today, when we question, when we doubt, when we refuse to accept easy answers, we are practicing a little bit of Socrates. His death was not the end of philosophy. It was its beginning. So, what is the lesson of Socrates? That to live truthfully is the greatest act of courage. That humor and humility are the companions of wisdom. That justice is worth more than survival. Socrates chose to die rather than betray his mission. And every time we question, every time we seek truth, every time we value wisdom over comfort, we keep his spirit alive. If this story inspired you, and you want to explore more journeys into truth, philosophy, and the lives of thinkers who changed the world, subscribe to Thinker's Odyssey. Because the examined life doesn't end with Socrates, it begins with you.